several young people have ended up in the world of Grimgar, with no memory of the past, other than their own names. Not knowing anyone, nor understanding what was going on, they meet a strange guy named BRITTANY, who explains to everyone that they are now volunteer soldiers. He hands out a small amount of money to all the youngsters, and explains that they should hunt creatures and trade their parts, such as claws and horns, to get more money, otherwise they would starve to death. And guys, help us grow our channel by hitting the like button and subscribing to our channel. We have a lot more exciting content coming up that you don't want to miss. So give it a thumbs up so we can beat the goal of 153 likes on this video. And now let's go. A few days later, we see that a group of youngsters had gathered together and were trying to hunt 2 goblins, the weakest creatures in Grimgar. However, despite this, they all show great difficulty in fighting, with no real skills. After nearly injuring themselves several times, Haruhiro, the protagonist, questions whether they are really capable of defeating the creatures. After failing to hunt the goblins, Haru wakes up and starts talking to Ranta, who despite having woken up with him calls him lazy. Manato, the leader of the group, appears and explains that he had replaced Haru in his duties to let him rest, and calls the 2 of them to breakfast. Meanwhile, Moguzo and Shihoru finish cooking, while Yume is excited by the smell of food. While they eat breakfast, Manato explains that they need to save as much as possible so they don't starve, and that they should try to hunt a lone goblin, as 2 were too many for them, since, although it would take time to get money, it would be the safest way, commenting that this was not a game. Haru asks what a game is, but, although Manato used the word, he didn't know what it was either. He reflects on how often things like this happen, with them using words that seem familiar without knowing what they mean, like something stuck in their throat that couldn't get out. And although there were other creatures that profited much more than goblins, they were much stronger than them, who were still just recruits, with some of the young people who appeared in the world along with him, having already managed to rise in level by becoming officers of BRITTANY's frontier, as they had made groups of strong people, with only the weakest left without a group, Haru's class. In this world, everyone must choose some class, and Haru, who has chosen to be a thief, remembers his master Barbara, who trained him, and although she was quite hot, she was much more sadistic and harsh, and nicknamed him the Old Cat because of his eyes that always seemed to be sleepy. He explains that Moguzo has chosen to be a warrior, Ranta a black knight, Yume a huntress, Shihoru a mage, and their leader Manato, a priest, with everyone still trying to get used to their roles. They go in search of goblins, but end up finding a large group, and since they couldn't defeat even 2 of them, they realize that it was useless and risky to try to take on a whole group of creatures, and end up again penniless and hungry, envying the goblins who fed themselves. At dawn, Haru eventually wakes up and meets Manato, who tells him that he had gone to a cave and discovered a place with weak creatures that even they might be able to face. The 2 talk about their masters when Haruhiro begins to observe the red moon, and even though he can't remember where it came from, he is sure that there the moon had another color. Then, the next day, they hunt a lone goblin, but Ranta ends up making too much noise alerting the creature and spoiling the surprise attack. They attack the goblin awkwardly, but manage to surround it and make an effort to kill the creature fighting for its life, leaving everyone feeling bad about killing someone who wanted to live as much as they did. The goblin attacks Haru, wounding him in the shoulder, and jumps on top of him, hanging the boy who strikes back with a stab. Ranta throws the goblin away, and Moguzo takes the opportunity to strike his blow that kills the creature. While Yume removes the sword from Haru's shoulder and Manato heals him with his power, Ranta regrets not having delivered the last blow since that would have earned him an honor. Suddenly, the goblin who was pretending to be dead gets up and struggles to escape, but Ranta catches up to him and strikes him several times, putting an end to his life. Everyone is shaken by the situation, including Ranta, who cries as he realizes what he has done. After the first successful hunt, they get a little money and each spends their small amount on items they preferred. Afterwards, Haru meets with Ranta, who is still shaken by what happened. He tells him that with the honor for killing the goblin he could summon a demon, which has the power to reveal the presence of enemies, and sometimes to explode a demon joke. Later, the whole group gathers on the bridge and admires the sunset after a successful day. In the evening, Ranta is much more animated, planning to spy on the girls in the bath, but is unsuccessful, and the other boys, who had followed him in an attempt to stop him, end up as culprits as well. The next day, Moguzo prepares breakfast while talking to Haru about how he loved cooking for people. Afterwards, the boys get together to apologize to the girls for the night before, but ironically, everyone apologizes except Ranta, who was the only one who had actually messed up, but he ends up getting slapped by Yume. Later, they leave for another hunting mission, but find only the footprints of several goblins and decide that it was better not to risk it, ending the day with nothing. And so the days go by, without them getting any game or money. With that, while Haru washes his clothes, he reflects on how everyone had only one piece of underwear, having to wash them every day, going without at night, to let them dry the next day. When he finishes, Shihoru shows up to wash his underwear, leaving the boy wondering if they were also without their underwear, and he is tempted to peek in, but resists, not wanting to lower himself to Ranta's level, and ends up running into Yume on the way out, who makes him uncomfortable in her short clothes. Going to his room, he meets up with Ranta and makes up an excuse for him to leave it for another day, for fear of him spying on the girls again. The next day, the group goes to a town called Damuro, which served as a goblin base, in the hope of finding the creatures themselves, and end up finding one that was sleeping, which is easily defeated, causing them to cheer up for earning the best reward so far. With the success of the first hunt, they continue to hunt lone goblins while sketching a map of the location, even at the risk of running into a large group. With this, they have made some good money, managing to buy new food, clothes, and weapons, and Manato comments to the boys that he wants to save up so they can learn new skills. Meanwhile, the girls enjoy their new clothes and Yume encourages her friend to lose her shame, and talk to the boys again. Later, Haru thanks Manato for everything. Without him the group wouldn't know what to do, since he was not only a dear friend, but their leader. But Manato replies that he is the one who is grateful to have his friends around, since without the group, he would be alone in a world like that. Back in Damuro City, the group fights a goblin using their new abilities. Ranta had gained the power to summon the demon he wanted and called it the Zodiac. Yume got a skill called Diagonal Cut, Haru got a skill called Backstab, Shihoru learned how to use shadow elements. Manato became both a healer and a tank vanguard, while Moguzo acquired a new, more powerful type of blow. With them being much more powerful, Manato reflects how they evolved, being able to defeat 3 goblins at once, and comments that maybe they could even increase the number to 4, if they improve their strategies, and starts quoting everyone's specialties, saying how important each one of them was, but he doesn't comment on Haru's specialty, who is curious to know how he was useful to the group, but thinks about asking Manato later, thinking he has plenty of time ahead of him. However, he did not know that they would be attacked by a group of goblins soon after. One of them shoots him, and then Manato heals him, and they flee, but before they escape, Manato is wounded by an arrow and without the strength to heal himself. Everyone is lost, not knowing what to do, as he was not only the healer but also the one who coordinated everything. In desperation, they take the wounded Manato to be healed by a priest, where they discover that unfortunately, their friend did not resist. The priest explains that they must cremate Manato's body because everyone who was not cremated became a servant of the lifeless king. Everyone is distraught at the death of their friend, and so they have Manato's funeral with everyone present, including the priest, and Haru throws his friend's ashes to the wind. After the wake, with everyone still desolate, Ranta says he is leaving because he saw no point in staying there and is slapped by Yume, who begins to cry afterward. Later, Haru and Moguzo find Ranta in the tavern where Manato used to go. He says he wants to quit, since without the leader they would not be able to move on, and blames Haru for what happened, since Manato had been unable to heal himself because he had used it to heal his wound, and the two begin to argue until Moguzo gets angry and puts an end to the fight, surprising both of them since he was always super calm and quiet. They realize that they had no choice but to manage without Manato when Kikawa, a member of another, stronger group shows up, and after finding out that Manato had died, shows his feelings to the group. He explains that since priests have healing powers, they are usually targeted by enemies and usually the job of protecting them was the warriors, leaving Moguzo feeling bad for not being able to save his friend. Since having a priest in the group was of utmost importance, Kikawa offers to introduce someone else to replace Manato. And so, Mary joins Haru's team, but she is cold to everyone and doesn't cooperate much with the team, as she refuses to fight so as not to become a target of the enemy, and refuses to use her healing power with injuries that aren't serious so as not to run out of energy. And without Manato as a leader, they are completely disorganized, not being able to do any successful hunting. After a few days, the 3 boys gather again at the tavern, reflecting how Manato was missed. When RENJI, a member known to be powerful and the leader of one of the strongest groups in existence, shows up and to show his feelings for Manato's death, he hands over a gold coin, which was worth a good amount of money, as a way to help the small group. But Haru returns the coin, saying that he could not accept it. Ranta gets angry because with that money they would be able to buy their insignia, but Moguzo says he agrees with the attitude, because he thought Manato would not be happy if they accepted the gift. Haru then comments that the group was weak, not only because of the new member Mary, but also because of their lack of communication, as they had distanced themselves from the girls since the death of their leader, without even consulting them before adding Mary to the team. Feeling bad about this, he apologizes to Yume for having excluded her and Shihoru by accident. She gets angry and starts to cry, saying that it was not his fault, explaining that she was not good with words either and that they were all friends and should not stay apart. This makes Haru reflect that although Manato was instrumental to the group, they were all friends and important to the team. Distraught, they begin to cry over the death of their companion and seek solace in each other in a warm embrace. Shihoru, who was taking a shower, ends up seeing the two hugging in the dark and thinks the two are in a relationship, leaving them bewildered by the misunderstanding. After the situation is cleared up, everyone talks about the importance of treating Mary in a more friendly way as part of the team, and Ranta is excited about becoming close to her, and so they spend the day trying to get closer to Mary to make her feel welcome. But the girl is not very receptive and continues to act in a dry and stern manner with everyone. They fight a group of goblins, and everyone tries their hardest in the battle, except Mary, who keeps just watching everyone as she hunches over. However, when they manage to defeat all the creatures, Mary heals Moguzo, who had received a head wound, but refuses to heal Ranta, who had a slight wound on his arm. Despite this, she is still rigid about opening up to them. In the tavern, everyone is talking, and Mary sits alone, isolated from everyone else. They feel bad for not having invited her and wonder why she was so removed from people, when they realize that she was talking to someone, Shinohara, from Orion, a group famous by everyone. Later, Haru reflects on how he was being the new leader of the group, thinking about how he didn't want to carry the burden of this task, when he imagines Manato starting to talk to him, encouraging him, saying that he can do it, and disappears. The next day, they battle another group of goblins, and Haru notices that Moguzo was more cautious, as he was without a helmet, and because he was a warrior, he always fought head-on, unlike Moguzo, who, as a thief, always attacked while hiding. After they defeat one of the goblins together, he is surprised to see Mary praying for his death and thinks how they knew nothing about her. After the fight, he offers to help Moguzo buy a helmet, and Yume says she will help too. Suddenly, they are attacked by a goblin, and Mary protects Shihoru and for the first time fights the creature to protect her. Afterwards, Haru thanks her for saving Shihoru and invites her to eat with them, but although she seems friendlier, she denies the invitation, continuing to act distant. Noticing her advance, they decide to go after Shinohara, the guy who talked to Mary in the tavern, in an attempt to find out more about her. He then calls Hayashi, who had once been in the girls' group. He tells that he was her friend from the beginning when they were still volunteer soldiers, like Haru's group. Back then, she was the opposite of how she is now, always helping everyone, carrying everything on her back, and healing them with any wounds. This made them level up very fast and feel invincible, until the day they went to explore the Sirene mine and ended up being attacked by a giant white kobold with black claws called Death Spot. On that day, 3 of her group died, and she was unable to help anyone because she was already out of her healing power, having used it up so much earlier. After the tragedy, they joined Orion, but soon after she left Orion because it was too painful to be around Hayashi as it reminded her of what happened, and since then she keeps moving from group to group and had never smiled. He then asks them to help Mary, and Shinohara says that he also knows the pain of losing a companion, and asks them to never forget this pain and to cherish those who are still by their side. When they return to the house, they think about what they would do with what they have found out about Mary and come to the conclusion that just as they needed to overcome Manato's death, she also needed to overcome the loss of her former companions, and decide to help her with this, treating her as much as possible as part of their group. But Ranta is the one who questions why he is kind to her just because she has suffered some losses, and says that the group cared about Mary but did not show concern for him. Haru, realizing that Ranta was feeling lonely, comments that he considers him a friend. Ranta then apologizes for the way he acted, and everyone wonders how to face Mary the next day, but that they would try to treat her as best they could. And so, another day of hunting begins, and Haru and Yume encounter a goblin carrying the dagger he had lost the day Manato died. He ends up losing his mind and tries to attack the creature, but luckily Yume stops him in time, and he apologizes for almost putting them both at risk. They then meet up with the rest of the group, who decide to return because of the rain. But before they go, Haru tells Mary about Manato, who is priest, battle shield, and leader, having 3 roles in the team, and he figures it must be hard for him. But he didn't think about it until after his loss, not having much to do now. But despite being a group that no one chose, they bonded and became friends, and he explains that he also considered her a friend, and everyone agrees, saying that they felt that way about her too. Back in Ortana, Haru invites Mary to join them again, but she again declines the invitation, but is more receptive. Days go by, and they continue to hunt goblins in the city of Damuro, focusing on improving their equipment with the money they acquire from the hunts, such as Moguzo's helmet. But they end up becoming a joke to the other groups of more advanced levels for only hunting goblins. They also gradually become closer to Mary, who finally accepts their invitation to join them for dinner. After this, everyone got new abilities. Shihoru got new magic that puts monsters to sleep. Ranta got the power to automatically distance himself from the enemy and then attack him. Moguzo got the power to paralyze enemies for a short time, and Yume improved her bow accuracy and the power to dodge enemy attacks. Mary was already at a level above the others. Haru, on the other hand, as a thief, managed to silence his steps, and at some moments lights appeared that showed him the exact place where he should hit his adversaries, but he had no idea what that power was. At night, Haru imagines talking to Manato again and reflects on how united the group was and, admiring the moon, says proudly that he wanted to show him how the group was now. The next day, the group prepares to go after the goblin group that had Haru's dagger, to avenge Manato's death, and they all promise that they would never let a friend die again, including Mary. They then begin the hunt by storming the building where it served as the goblin stronghold using their new abilities, and we see how the group has evolved, being able to fight them more efficiently. However, the creatures also prove to be difficult opponents because they know the techniques and spells of humans, and Yume is wounded by one of them, but the group protects her and Mary heals her quickly. Then the same happens to Moguzo, who is also healed by her, and they manage to win the fight. However, one of the goblins escapes. They go after the creature that was already weak and almost dying. Ranta approaches the poor goblin to put an end to it, but they discover that it was a trap. Another goblin was hiding and hits Mary with an arrow, wounding her severely, in the same way as Manato. Everyone is desperate and fights to protect their new friend. The sniper goblin flees through the roof, and Haru goes after him, realizing that it was the same one with his dagger. The two begin to fight, and the creature loses his dagger, but they roll across the roof, and he begins to hang Haru. However, Yume throws the dagger that had fallen to him, who puts an end to his opponent. After the battle, the group goes to Manato's tombstone along with Mary, who had survived the injury. Haru reflects on how he wishes he had had more time with Manato to get to know him better. They show that with their successful hunts, they had finally bought their insignia, no longer being just recruits. As a tribute, they all bought one more insignia for their former leader. On the way back, Haru asks how Mary was doing, and she says that she was fine as she had healed herself with her magic. The two then talk about how magic could heal physical wounds but could not heal their emotional wounds. Through this, they end up getting closer, and Mary seems a little better about her loss. After a lot of hard work, the team decides to take a day off. Haru decides to walk through town and meets Mary for coffee, and they begin to talk. The two of them spend the day together while the rest of the group enjoys the day off, each in their way. At night, they gather at the tavern as usual and meet up with Kikawa, who tells them about a new group of stronger goblins that were in the town of Damuro, where Haru's group always hunts. With this, they think it best to choose a new hunting ground, and Haru suggests going to the Sirene Mine, where they would face new creatures worth more money. Everyone is excited about the idea, but they decide to avoid Death Spot, the most powerful creature there, ignoring the fact that it was the place where Mary had lost her companions. She leaves the tavern feeling shaken by the situation, and Haru goes after her, apologizing for not having considered her feelings, explaining that he would understand if she didn't want to go since they weren't going to the place where Manato was attacked either. But Mary says that she needs to face her past to overcome what happened with the help of her new friends. And so, everyone decides to prepare as best they can before heading to the mine. Haru then goes back to meet with his master barber to train a new skill, which, as always, is hard on him. During the training, he takes the opportunity to ask her if she knew what the lights were that showed him the weak points of his enemies. She explains that it was a power that every experienced thief acquires, and that he should improve his physical strength and technique to see the lights more clearly. After preparing themselves, the group goes to the mine and finds out that it was developed when the Arabikia kingdom of humans wanted to expand its domains, but, by order of the lifeless king, the place was taken over by a group of kobolds who have been living in the mine ever since. Once inside the place, the group fights against the creatures, and Haru and Yume use their new abilities, defeating some kobolds. Ranta also uses his new power to cause fear in the enemy, but the magic does not prove very effective, and the team offers help, but he refuses and defeats the opponent alone. As usual, Mary says her prayers for her dead enemies and explains to Haru that all the kobolds had a talisman and that the ones they had just faced were the weakest because they were on the first level of the mine, which had more than 10 levels. She says that the place had smaller, normal, and ancient kobolds, and the lower they went in the mine, the more they would find stronger creatures. So they go down to the second level and find normal kobolds sleeping, and Ranta thinks of taking advantage of the situation to attack, but Haru doesn't think it's a good idea, and they continue walking, unaware that Death Spot was watching them. They continue the battle with other kobolds, and Shihoru uses her new ability to trap her enemies, while Haru uses his power of lights to defeat other opponents. Ranta comments that they were also able to defeat the normal kobolds with some ease, encouraging them to continue, but Mary says that after the third level it won't be so easy because of the elders, who fight with weapons and techniques, so Haru decides that they had better go home. At night, Haru reflects on how he and the others in the group always fall out with Ranta, wondering what he should do as the new team leader, and decides to call him to talk. But this only makes things worse, making Ranta feel attacked, starting a new argument between them. Ranta says that he is not interested in being anyone's friend and that he doesn't care if they hate him, since he is fulfilling his role in the team as a Black Knight. The next day, they return to the mine to face more kobolds, and Ranta continues to act carelessly, almost injuring Haru with one of his attacks. After the fight, the group heads to the fourth level, which led to a farm with some strange animals and, By an oversight, Ranta activates an alarm system that puts a group of kobolds on alert. Mary advises them to go down to the 5th level, as the creatures have an advantage in open fields, when Death Spot appears, leaving her in a panic at the sight of the creature that killed her companions. She begins to remember them when they decided to go to the mine and awakens with Haru calling her. She recovers and guides the group while Death Spot searches for them. Then, with her help, they reach the 5th level, which was used for metal smelting, where their companions had died. She explains that she knew a way for them to return to the 4th level, but there was no way to get there, and they conclude that they should wait in a place that her old group used to rest. Once there, they discover that the place was rarely frequented by kobolds, but are surprised by the bodies of 3 of Mary's former companions who had become servants of the lifeless king since they had not been cremated. And she, who knew a magic to break the spell, probably because she knew that that day would come, asks to go ahead of the attack while the others wait for some order from Haru, who upon realizing it gives his command to them. But despite the various skills they have acquired, they don't manage to defeat the 3 servants, who continue with their old skills which were far superior to those of Haru's group. Suddenly, Mary passes through fire, a power used by one of them, and Haru follows her worriedly, but she manages to undo the spell, seeing her friend's face for a second before it turns to dust, ceasing the fire that had been created by it. With the help of Ranta and Haru, Mary removes the spell from another former companion. But even though the two have worked well as a team, Ranta starts a new argument saying that Haru was not Manato. Then the whole group comes together to defeat the last bewitched one, and after that, Mary, with her former teammate's powder in her hand, thanks everyone for helping her free her friends. And the gang reflects on how they still needed to evolve. When suddenly, Death Spot appears through a wall leaving everyone surprised. They try to run, but the creature howls, calling the other kobolds who begin to chase them. The gang runs to get up to the 4th level, but Death Spot catches up to them and destroys one of the wooden structures they were standing on, nearly knocking Haru down, who is saved by Ranta. The two try to run away, but the creature launches an attack that knocks Ranta down, who asks Haru to save himself because, as leader, everyone needed him. Having no other choice, Haru joins the others who, although worried about his friend's life, are waiting for the leader's orders. Haru then asks Mary to show him another way to the 5th level to save Ranta, who explains that they should go up to the 3rd level to reach their companion from there. Everyone proceeds with the plan while Ranta, surrounded by the kobolds, fights for his life. Fortunately, he manages to evade the creatures by going to the farm where he uses the animals to hide. He takes advantage of the moment to summon Zodiac, but the demon shows no interest in helping. Meanwhile, the gang prepares to go to Ranta and Yume. Even though she doesn't like him, she cries with concern about how lonely her companion must be feeling in the mine. After a while, at the farm, Ranta ends up being sniffed out by one of the kobolds. Although he puts an end to it, the noise alerts the other creatures, forcing him to flee. But luckily, the group had already arrived, and they are surprised to see that he managed to get there on his own. Ranta hides in a small house while Zodiac is amused by the situation, and Death Spot appears, destroying everything and attacking him. He runs from the wounded creature, when help finally appears. The whole gang fights to save Ranta using their abilities, and they manage to escape safely. Mary heals Ranta's wounds, and he is thrilled to be reunited with his comrades again. Yume notices her colleague with watery eyes, but he, being very proud, gets angry with her. The group then walks towards the exit while Haru wonders if he was being a good leader since he wasn't Manato. Mary tells everyone that she was almost out of magic, and Haru realizes that the others were also exhausted, so he asks them to continue carefully so as not to alert the kobolds. But further on, Death Spot appears again. With everyone out of strength, the leader realizes that someone should stay behind and quickly uses his skills to knock the opponent out, causing them both to fall. Mary tries to go after her friend, but Ranta stops her. After the fall, Haru sees the gang leaving and hears Ranta yelling at him not to give up. Wounded, he prepares to face his opponent. The two stare at each other for a while, when the lights appear to Haru, and realizing that the creature seemed to move in slow motion, he lets himself be guided by them and hits Death Spot in the other eye, killing him and then fainting. When he wakes up, he sees Mary, who was humming while keeping him company. He thinks he was in heaven, making her laugh. He finds out that they were all doing well and that with the death of the powerful Death Spot, they had gotten a lot of money. After celebrating their victory, Haru goes to Manato's tombstone to talk and realizes how he had evolved as a leader. He reflects that even though he had no memories of his past, it didn't matter because he had memories with his current friends. And so, the gang sets off on another adventure. If you want to see more anime videos, then make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We appreciate your support.